WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar and 7 o'clock in Abuja. Good evening and welcome to Newslink. And many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio Broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. A special representative of the United Nations meets with the management of the Ivorian Electoral Commission.
We have received information on the work already done for the next election. There are also concerns raised by political forces and the candidates, and above all, explanations on the law, the electoral law, and the efforts to train representatives of political parties.
Provisional results from Guinea's constitutional referendum indicate a 90% yes vote, despite criticism from opposition groups. Alliance of Sahel States withdraws from the International Criminal Court, citing imperialist influence and selective justice. And Nigeria's suspends Senator Natasha to resume plenary in October as the Senate unseals her position.
It's very unfortunate that at this time, after so many years of democracy, we would have a National Assembly being run by such dictatorship. It's totally unacceptable.
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Starting in Côte d'Ivoire, the United Nations is emphasizing the importance of ensuring a peaceful and transparent electoral process. This appeal was reinforced on Monday, September 22, by Leonardo Santos Simao, the special representative of the Secretary General for West Africa and the Sahel. His comments came after engaging with the country's Independent Electoral Commission (IEC) to discuss arrangements for the upcoming presidential elections set to take place on October 25. The meeting, which took place at the Commission's headquarters in Abidjan, Cocody, was presided over by the Electoral Commission President Ibrahim Koulibaly Kolbat. Several stakeholders were present, including representatives from civil society groups, political parties, and regional partners. Leonardo Simao is UN's representative for West Africa and the Sahel.
We have received information on the work already done for the next election. There are also concerns raised by political forces and the candidates, and above all, explanations on the law, the electoral law, and the efforts to train representatives of political parties. And we encourage the Commission to continue to work in order to have peaceful elections in the country.
Leonardo Santos Simao is the UN Special Representative for West Africa and the Sahel. Meanwhile, in Guinea, preliminary results from the constitutional referendum held on September 21 indicate a substantial majority in favor of yes. These findings, accounting for over 80% of polling stations, were officially announced by the General Directorate of Elections on Monday, September 22, 2025. Despite this outcome, questions have been raised about the inclusiveness of the voting process. Augustine Coley has more in this report.
According to the General Directorate of Elections, ballots were counted at more than 19,400 of over 23,600 polling stations. Out of 6 million registered voters, 4 million participated in the constitutional referendum, resulting in a turnout rate of 91%. The yes vote in the referendum has so far won decisively, securing 90.06% of the vote cast. The poll was organized under the supervision of the National Referendum Monitoring Observatory and aimed to establish a new constitution for Guinea. The text, developed after many months of consultations, seeks to address aspirations for better governance, a strong separation of powers, and lasting institutional stability. However, as with previous elections, the process has faced criticism. Some opposition groups and civil society organizations are questioning the inclusivity of the process and are raising concerns about the fairness of the votes. Meanwhile, the General Directorate of Elections urged patience and calm while the final results are being consolidated and prepared for announcement. The final results are expected to be released in the coming days. At the moment, a provisional result indicates a clear lead for the yes votes, setting the stage for the adoption of the new constitutional law. Therefore, barring any unexpected development, Guinea appears poised to...
A report from WDR's Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde, voiced by Christopher Aticho. Meanwhile, the announced withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger from the International Criminal Court continues to generate debate. They accuse the ICC of imperialism and selective justice. In a joint statement announced on Monday, the three countries, which are part of the Confederation of Sahel States, condemned the misuse of international jurisdiction. Let's join Abdullah Hassan for the details.
The three Central Sahelian states assert that the International Criminal Court (ICC), which they joined in 2000, has diverted from its original mission. Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger accuse the ICC of being influenced to serve imperialist interests. Mamadou Kassogi, Malian Minister of Justice and Human Rights, is the keeper of the AES seals.
Since the adhesion to the Rome Statute, the three countries have cooperated with the ICC, not only on the basis of the relevant provisions of the statute, but also on the basis of agreements and protocol agreements regarding the conditions of installation and work of the ICC on their territories. However, over time, it has been shown that this jurisdiction has become an instrument of neo-colonial repression at the mercy of imperialism, thus becoming a global example of selective justice.
In their joint statement, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger also criticized the International Criminal Court for its failure to prosecute certain serious crimes. As a result, they announced their definitive withdrawal from the international jurisdiction.
The ICC has shown itself incapable of taking charge and judging crimes of war, crimes against humanity, crimes of genocide and crimes of aggression. With regard to this situation, the government of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, forming the Confederation of the Sahel States, is aware of the confederal public opinion and the international community, their sovereign decision to withdraw from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court with immediate effect.
Despite this decision, the three Sahelian countries expressed their willingness to remain open to international cooperation.
Abdullah Hassan with Ali Cham's report from Bamako.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
We remain in the Sahel, and this time in Niger, where the Ministry of Interior has officially dissolved 400 private security companies. This order, signed by the Minister of the Interior, is based on decree from February 2025 that establishes a legal framework for these activities, which are deemed sensitive. While some advocates of private security companies welcome this measure, observers are calling for solutions to address the potential consequences of the decision. Imo Edit reports.
At Soges International, one of the largest private security companies in Niger, the authorities' dissolution of 400 private security agencies has been met with caution. Given the tense security context, the measures only encourage if it's truly aimed to regulate the sector as indicated by the government. Bukari Issa Yakuba is a promoter of Soges International.
Given the security context we are in, it is logical that the state assigns security companies to ensure clarity in our profession. Security is not a minor activity in the country, so this is no surprise. We were all aware that the Ministry of Interior had raised the issue, especially for promoters who had not completed the applications. We have now been given a 2-week period to finalize them. Beyond that, any company without renewed contracts will be dissolved.
Civil society is alerting the government to a measure that could cause thousands of people to lose their jobs. Citizen organizations are calling on the authorities to find palliative measures. Hima Saibu is a civil society actor.
Let's hope that the dissolution of these mining companies, the state has thought of palliative measures, because without that, there will be more families and young people who will go unemployed, and these are the consequences that this situation could cause.
From now on, the opening and monitoring of private security companies will be stricter. A decree dating from last February has tightened the conditions. These include a ban on carrying out sovereign missions, strict supervision of the use of weapons, and the requirement that promoters be of Nigerian nationality and subject to a morality check.
A report from WDR's Niamey correspondent Mutala Zuberi, voiced by Imo Edet. The 80th session of the UN General Assembly officially commenced today, September 23, marked by the opening of its high-level general debate. This year's central theme, Better Together, 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights, underscores the Assembly's ongoing commitment to these global priorities. Over the course of the debate, scheduled from September 23 to 29, more than 150 heads of state and government will address the Assembly, sharing their positions and perspectives on pressing international issues. Among the notable discussions, the African continent has united in its call for one more permanent seat on the UN Security Council, advocating for the equitable representation of this influential body. Amid the mounting global challenges, Africa continues to push for meaningful reform within the Council's structure. That said, concerns persist over the continent's likelihood of securing such a seat, highlighting questions about the dynamics of global power sharing and the hurdles Africa faces in achieving its objectives. Elsewhere in Accra, Ghana, hundreds of demonstrators took to the streets on Monday in protest against illegal mining, locally known as Galamsey, rallying under the hashtag Stop Galamsey Now. The event, spearheaded by the Fix the Country movement, came on the heels of a vigil held at Revolution Square the day before. Participants sought to draw attention to what organizers have called an environmental and economic crisis endangering the future of the nation. From Accra, Nadi Ditete reports.
The march began at the Accra Mall and wound slowly through the capital's main streets before ending at the Revolutionary Square opposite the Jubilee House. Carrying placards and chanting slogans, demonstrators drew attention to the widespread destruction caused by Galamsey. According to the Water Resources Commission, about 60% of Ghana's rivers are now polluted, including major sources like the Pra and Cobra, Birim and Ofin. The Ghana Water Company has also warned of rising treatment costs due to toxic chemicals such as mercury and cyanide. One protester said Ghana's first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, whose legacy was being commemorated on the holiday, would be deeply disappointed with the current state of mining in the country.
I am saying this today. Nkrumah, wherever Nkrumah is disappointed in Ghana as a country, and it's because of one thing. Nkrumah stood up as a single individual, and he was able to bring justice for Ghana. Even us, all of us, we cannot even come together to fight Galamsey. Nkrumah is disappointed wherever he is, and if you are a Ghanaian, you should be embarrassed. Whilst we celebrate Founders Day today, we should be ashamed as a country that we are not able to fight Galamsey. But Nkrumah that we are celebrating today, he stood single-handedly and he fought for Ghana's freedom.
The impacts go beyond water pollution. More than 100,000 acres of cocoa farms have already been lost, and crop yields in some mining areas have dropped sharply, threatening food security and livelihoods. The protesters reiterated their call for a state of emergency to be declared.
Declare state of emergency. Declare it now. Declare it. You have the power. You have the 2/3 of parliament. You can do it.
Organizers say the march is only the beginning of renewed pressure on government to take decisive action, combining law enforcement with alternative livelihoods and urgent public education to end what they call an unfolding ecocide. For WADR, Nadi Ditete, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Special representative of the United Nations meets with the management of the Ivorian Electoral Commission. Provisional results from Guinea's constitutional referendum indicated 90% yes vote, despite criticism from opposition groups. Alliance of Sahel states withdraw from the International Criminal Court, citing imperialist influence and selective justice. Still ahead, Nigeria's suspended Senator Natasha to resume plenary in October as the Senate unseals her position. We have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Nigeria, the suspended Kogi Central Senator Natasha Akpoti Odwagan has returned to her office in the National Assembly. This followed the reopening of her office in the National Assembly by the Sergeant at Arms of the National Assembly, along with a combined team of security operatives. There was mild drama at the National Assembly complex on Tuesday following Natasha's arrival. The lawmaker, dressed in black, arrived at about 2:30 p.m. in the company of her supporters shortly after the Sergeant at Arms announced the reopening of her office, which had been sealed for months. However, her entry was initially resisted by some security operatives who prevented her from accessing the main building. The Senate is currently on recess and is expected to resume plenary on October 7, 2025. The unsealing of Natasha's office is an indication that the suspended lawmaker may soon resume her official duties as a senator, as lawmakers prepare to resume plenary on October 7, 2025. Take a listen to her.
In everything, it just shows that sometimes it's good to put the institutions to test. We can't cow down in the face of injustice. No one is more Nigerian than us. Senator Fabio is not more of a senator than I am. He's not a governor of this place. And he treated me as if I was his servant or I was a domestic staff in his house. It's very unfortunate that at this time, after so many years of democracy, we would have a National Assembly be run by such dictatorship. It's totally unacceptable. As for me, I'm glad to be here. And even though we have been illegally suspended, no day have I hesitated in effectively carrying out my duties as a senator of Kogi Central to the very best of my capacity. I have never, no day went by without me looking out for opportunities, either in terms of bringing infrastructure or projects to my people, and even jobs wherever I could, because I didn't want them to suffer, the neglect and the vacuum that was created by this injustice.
Senator Natasha had made an allegation of sexual harassment against the Senate President Godswill Akpabio. Well, now, Nigeria is among the countries with the highest number of out-of-school children globally, leaving millions without access to essential education. In Gombe State, located in the northeast, local authorities have launched a renewed initiative to bring children back into classrooms. Our Abuja correspondent Usman Omar reports on what it means for families in the region already facing insecurity.
The statistics are shocking. UNICEF reports that Nigeria accounts for 15% of the world's out-of-school children, totaling more than 18 million boys and girls. Two-thirds of these children are situated in the country's troubled northeast and northwest regions, where poverty and conflict have hindered access to education and increased vulnerability. In Gombe, state officials estimate that nearly 800 children are not attending school. However, they insist that change is on the horizon. The government has launched an enrollment drive aimed at bringing these children into classrooms and providing them with a chance at a better future. Aisha Megari is the Commissioner for Education.
We talked last week and today we are working it. And this is just the local government enrollment drive. We are going to do community enrollment and we are going to do house to house. And you see, just for today we have enrolled over 100 children. And you can imagine if we continue this for the next 30 days. We have a target of 400,000.
Behind the statistics are real families, mothers looking for safety for their daughters, and fathers hoping their sons can break free from the cycle of poverty and joblessness that contributes to instability. For them, education is more than literacy, it is a lifeline. UNICEF is supporting this initiative. Nushat Rafiq, chief of UNICEF's Bauchi Field Office, states that the agency and its partners are dedicated to collaborating with communities to ensure that every child has the opportunity to learn.
UNICEF is supporting this drive very strongly, and we are all for the basic right of the child as an education.
The challenge remains significant, especially with insecurity still prevalent in the northeast. However, each child who is removed from the streets and placed in a school is a step toward achieving stability, peace and hope for the broader Sahel region. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview segment is about the first high-level general debate At the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, which begins today, September 23, with the main theme, Better Together, 80 Years and More for Peace, Development and Human Rights. From September 23 to 29, over 150 heads of state and government will take turns at the UN General Assembly podium to deliver their addresses during this general debate. The African continent now speaks with one voice, demanding one more permanent membership on the UN Security Council. Faced with various global crises, Africa continues to call for reform of the UN Security Council. However, concerns are arising regarding Africa's chances of joining this strategic UN Council. Our guest is Michael Nketia, an international relations expert who provides analysis about the situation.
If Africa is to secure a permanent seat on the UN Security Council, as codified in the Charter of the United Nations, 2/3 of the current membership of the UN General Assembly or the UN itself must vote to approve that proposal for the permanent seats on the UN Security Council to be expanded to accommodate more seats, more so give a seat at the Security Council to Africa.
Do you believe the current 5 permanent members of the Security Council are truly willing to share their veto power with new members?
Since time immemorial, any dominant major world power has consistently refused to share their power with emerging states or emerging powers. Now, one of the most basic concepts in international relations is the concept of power balancing. No dominant power wants to share its power with any emerging power, and that has been the norm at the United Nations. The 5 permanent member states on the UN Security Council, which is the United Kingdom, France, Russia, China, and the almighty United States of America, consistently, they've demonstrated over the years that they don't want any emerging power or any other power to attain a permanent seat at the UN Security Council by virtue of their interest and that's powers that they have. They have demonstrated that they are not willing to share power with any emerging power, and that is where the difficulty lies, because even if 2/3 majority of the current membership of UN votes to increase the permanent seats on the UN Security Council from 5 to 7 or 8 or 10 or even more, per the Charter of the UN, the 5 permanent states have to ratify that voting decision by the 2/3. And if they refuse to ratify that decision, what it means is that, yes, you voted to increase the number of permanent seats on the UN Security Council, but the 5 dominant powers, who are currently the only permanent seats on the council, will still vote against it. And then that earlier voting decision would amount to nothing. So it boils down to the 5 dominant powers. And once they are not ready and willing to share their power, it means that it is a very tall, that a Herculean task for Africa to secure a permanent seat on the UN Security Council.
Africa has major partners as permanent members of the UN Security Council, which include China, Russia, and somewhat the USA. Wouldn't this be an opportunity for those major partners of Africa to support and accelerate its bid for a permanent seat on the Council?
I have my doubts that US, being the major dominant global power, will throw its weight behind Africa in its quest for a permanent seat at the Security Council. Reasons being that, number one, among the 5 permanent members on the Security Council, there is that fear among them that if any other continent or if any other member state is to be given a permanent seat, that state could act to the interest of one of the permanent members. Now, let me break it down for you. We know that China has an overbearing influence on the African continent. African countries are indebted more to China than the rest of the world combined. They are indebted more to China than any of the 5 permanent members on the Security Council. What this means is that if Africa is to be given 2 permanent seats on the UN Security Council, as advocated by the Zweni consensus, what that means is that if China needs 2 votes to influence a decision at the UN Security Council, China, by virtue of being the highest or leading creditor to the African continent, can influence the African countries to vote to support its interest on the Security Council. We know that currently Russia is also expanding its influence across the continent. What that means is that if Africa is to be given 2 permanent seats at the UN Security Council, Russia could also influence the leadership of the AU or African countries to vote at the Security Council to advance their interests, not necessarily the interest of Africa. So that has been the fear and the geopolitical calculations that all the 5 permanent members on the council, that is what is always preventing them from giving a support to Africa to have a permanent seat on the council.
Michael Nketia is an international relations expert. Well, in sports, Monday night delivered a historic moment in world football as Paris Saint-Germain forward Ousmane Dembélé was crowned the Ballon d'Or winner, becoming the world's best footballer after a stellar season that saw him lead PSG to their first ever UEFA Champions League title. The 28-year-old French age out to Barcelona's teenage sensation Lamine Yamal, while his PSG teammate Vitinha took a third place. An emotional Dembélé receiving the award from Brazilian legend Ronaldinho thanked his family, teammates and coach Luis Enrique, under whom he flourished this season. PSG swept the night, named Team of the Season, with Enrique winning Coach of the Year and former goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma taking home the Yasin Trophy, the best goalkeeper. On the women's side, Aitana Bonmati won her third consecutive Ballon d'Or, while England Sarina Wiegman was honored as Women's Coach of the Year. And Sunderland midfielder Habib Diarra has been ruled out until December following surgery on a groin injury. The 21-year-old Senegal international picked up the injury during training ahead of Sunderland's 1-1 draw with Aston Villa on Sunday. The club confirmed he underwent a successful operation on Monday. Diarra, who joined the Black Cards from Strasbourg in July for a reported club record £30 million, featured in all of 4 Sunderland's Premier League matches before the setback, and also represented Senegal twice in September. Sunderland, newly promoted to the top flight, currently sits 7th in the Premier League with 8 points from 5 games. We've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Ismaila Kamara and Falulu So for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms X and Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook WADR English Service. I am Sankule Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Baga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.